Have you ever been in that position where fish are feeding right in front of you and nothing?
It was so bad.
Today's guest says most anglers miss the easy fixes, and today we're going to break down some of the biggest trout tips from one of the best anglers in the country. And if you stick around to the end, you're going to get a super easy tip to identify whether a fish is feeding on dries or just below the surface on emergers, so you can hook up instead of striking out on your next trip.
Hell yeah.
This video is a quick summary of one of our biggest podcasts of 2025. Scott Sanchez was on the Wet Fly Swing podcast, and you could take a look at the Traveled series, episode 39. If you search Traveled Podcast 39, you can see Scott Sanchez. You can listen to the full episode. It's an amazing one. And if you want a chance to win this week, we're giving away Wet Fly Swing Pro as always. Just like, subscribe, and leave a comment of your best trout tip or your biggest takeaway from this podcast today, and it's going to get you a chance to get Wet Fly Swing Pro. Also want to let you know we're trying to reach 5,000 subscribers, so please subscribe. And then if we get 5,000, our next goal is 5 million. All right, let's get into it. These are the 7 mistakes fly anglers make when they're focusing on trout. Number 7, counting down to 1. Thinking you need more flies than you do. Scott really breaks this down in the podcast. He says most anglers have tons of boxes, tons of flies, and they keep changing flies. And Scott says he's really simple. He has one feather wet fly. He's got basically a split top emerger and an everything. He's got like 3 flies and everything emerger, and he just tweaks the size and color. And his takeaway on this one is fish don't need perfection. They need something that looks close and moves right. So there you go. As always, moves and looks right. That's better over perfection. All right, number 6, ignoring the trailing shuck. This is a big one. This is what most anglers miss as well. Most flies look too clean. They're not buggy enough. The trailing shuck shows the bug is stuck, and the fish, when they see that, they know that's a perfect insect food item they need to eat. And Scott describes it like shedding the skin. The bug is mid-change and it's exposed. The fish know that, so they're vulnerable and they get eaten. It looks perfect, so go for it. All right, number 5, Scott says not fishing 2 flies to cover depth is a big one. Most people are not hitting different layers. They're feeding in one lane, they're hitting one section. Maybe they're in the deep or the shallow, but they're not hitting at least 2 different sections. Scott runs bead heads below and emerges above, and it imitates exactly what the bugs are doing, rising through the water column. So you've got the emerger on the bottom, and you've got basically an emerger above, and you're hitting the both. And you can fish this out as you're fishing it through as well. The takeaway here, cover more water vertically, not just across the river. All right, number 4, the mistake that you see a lot is thinking fish aren't feeding. So sometimes you're out there, you don't see rises, you assume nothing's going on. Meanwhile, bugs are everywhere. Fish are feeding sometimes just below the surface, so you might not always see them with the noses sticking out. Scott says they're always feeding, so switch it up and go deeper if they're not on the surface. And his takeaway is no surface activity doesn't mean no feeding. Like he said, you just gotta get to the right place. That's the key today. Find where they are and keep fishing until you get them. All right, number 3, not understanding the transition stage. This is a good one. This is where most anglers lose the game. They think 2 categories, nip and dry. They ignore the most vulnerable stage. They don't recognize what fish are keyed on, right? Because it's either a nip or a dry. Scott breaks it down, and he says bugs are changing from water to air. They can swim away. They can't fly away. They get stuck in the film. That's the key. They get caught with their pants down and they're easy target. We mentioned this before, but this is a key one, knowing when to target the fish. Scott's takeaway is the transition stage is where fish feed most efficiently. So fish know that. Dries, of course, seeing them come up for dries is great. Nymphing, they're doing that a lot of the time, but that transitional stage is key. All right, number 2, misreading rise forms. This is our big one today. I want to make sure you know this if you're not aware. If you're watching fish but not understanding them, you see movement and assume it's dries. You don't notice subtle differences. You pick the wrong fly because of this. And Scott's rule is if you see the nose, that equals a dry fly. They're on the surface. If you see just the dorsal and tail with no nose, that's emergers. There's your biggest tip right there. If you see the nose, you know they're on dries. So that's key. Remember that next time you're on the water, and that'll help you. He even says you can use your ears. He says there's this audible pop that matters. So think about that as well. The takeaway, if the fish are telling you what they're eating, you just have to read it right. All right, and here we go. The number 1 biggest mistake that trout anglers are making right now is not creating a trigger at the end. And we've heard this before from some of the best. You got to create that trigger. You got to give them some reason to take. And he says this is the big mistake. It's an easy fix too. You can cast, drift, swing, nothing happens. Cast, drift, swing, but your fly moves at one speed. There's no movement. There's no change of direction. And Scott says the key here is to control the swing with mends. Let the fly accelerate at the end, and that change in speed can trigger the ease. This is a big one. This is why this is number one today. So remember, you're fishing that fly all the way through the run. This mimics what bugs actually do as they rise and move. And the big takeaway here is it's not just the fly, it's what the fly does, especially at the end, that matters. All right, we're closing this one out. That's all we have for you too. If you haven't yet, please click that subscribe button. We're going for 5,000 this week. And after 5,000, we're going to 5 million. Let's hype it up. Let's do it. If you want to, and check out that next episode, subscribe. If you want to become a member, you actually will get the next episode way before everybody else. Sometimes it's a week. Sometimes that's a few days. Sometimes that's longer than a week. So do that, and I appreciate you for stopping in, and we will see you on the next one. Check out the Wet Fly Swing podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify if you want to hear these full-length episodes. Going deep. All right, we'll talk to you then.